Hey, your General Assembly's back in business, and Ted Nesi is here to kind of evaluate the whole situation.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Yeah, there's no better go-to guy when it comes to the state issues than Ted Nesi. And of course, you should be reading him every Saturday morning on WPR.com, because if I don't know what's going on all week long. The Assembly met yesterday, and you know what? All is not pretty between the governor's office, the speaker's office, and the Senate president's office. The three of them kind of run the show. Well, the Senate president kind of just follows along and does whatever the governor says. But we'll kind of dig into what we can expect from our General Assembly coming up here momentarily. In the meantime, I just want to check in on a couple of matters. Again, another Happy New Year to you. I'll say that all week. That's okay. Don't you? When do you stop saying Happy New Year to people? Like January 15th? I don't know. Let's go to the rundown and check it out. Kevin, when do you stop saying Happy New Year to people?
On the 2nd.
On the 2nd?
Yeah.
Inauguration Day?
What about you?
Inauguration Day?
Lexi? Oh, Inauguration Day. Because she's very political. It's all about that Trump guy. Anyway, speaking of Trump intelligence, what? Yeah, he's got his own CIA in his brain. Here's the headline here. I think this is uncanny. I mean, it's uncanny. I don't even know what to say about it. Roll it.
There is no intelligence community worldwide that has the capabilities, the expertise, the analytic capability as the U.S. intelligence community.
CIA Director John Brennan defended U.S. intelligence, saying the president-elect should wait before drawing his own conclusions on Russian hacking.
I would suggest to individuals who have not yet seen the report, who have not yet been briefed on it, that they wait and see what it is that the intelligence community is putting forward.
CBS News has learned the presidential briefing on Russian hacking is not yet finalized by the intelligence community, but is nearing completion. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, whose website was at the center of the election leaks against Hillary Clinton, last night denied any ties to the Kremlin.
Our source is not the Russian government. And it is not a state party.
With our president-elect taking office, that America will be standing tall in the world again.
Hey, Julia, here's what you don't get to do. You don't get to tell us who your sources are not without telling us who your sources are. Okay? Now, I don't know about this new manufactured journalistic ethic that you seem to be bringing to the table that only Donald Trump seems to buy into. But it is unnerving, to say the least. I don't know where the American people are in reaction to this kind of stuff on a pre-presidential basis. I think this act's going to get real old, real fast when Donald Trump continues to, counter for no substantial reason whatsoever other than his own incredible brilliance and expertise for something he's never even studied. I don't even know how to finish that thought. It is unbelievable what goes on here with Donald Trump. He does hit a good one every once in a while, and a tweet on the money changed everything yesterday. So let's just go to the next item, and the congressional nevermind. The Republicans in Congress, there must be 3 or 4 or 5 of them up for investigation or something, because for them to try to reverse the ethics process in Washington back to pre-2008 days was quite a little stunt on Monday. And of course, Donald Trump tweeted out his concern about that. CBS has the latest.
For Republicans, the first day of the 115th Congress was a rocky one. They held an emergency meeting to undo a closed-door vote they took just one day earlier to gut the Independent Office of Congressional Ethics, a surprise move that had triggered bipartisan condemnation, plus a scolding from the president-elect, who tweeted, "Do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog their #1 act and priority?"
I'm concerned that now we have Republicans criticizing Republicans.
There was unanimous agreement to start again and take a more transparent approach to congressional ethics reform.
I think we're going to work it through properly, right? The American people say, hey, slow down, we want to know what's going on here.
Yeah. So Donald Trump got it right by accident and tweeted out his concern, and they stopped everything on a dime. I have to tell you something. If there was a legitimate reason for them to try to flip the ethics process, I don't have the time to explain it here now. I'm sure you can do your own research as to what was then, what they changed, and how they went back in 24 hours. But even if Donald Trump gets it right on a tweet, to react to a tweet is just bad precedent, period. So the whole thing is just, 8 Ways to Sunday Confusing. And of course, when it comes to the tweeting concept, Professor Michael Kennedy from Brown yesterday on the program had a thought on that.
We need to rethink the power of Twitter. I tweet. And when I was in administrative positions, I didn't want to tweet because I knew I could make a mistake. Trump is making mistakes all the time. But he's not like Ronald Reagan as the Teflon president, right? He is somehow different, that he can absorb these mistakes and just say, hey, I didn't really say that, or, well, I changed my mind.
All right, let's come home here for a second. This story, front page in the Providence Journal today, is quite fascinating. The power plant deal is now in Woonsocket's lap for a moment. Now, the water challenge for the proposed plant has always been there, and now Woonsocket may come to the rescue. Here's what Eyewitness News reported.
Can you imagine that?
There have been countless meetings with hours and hours of testimony. The prospect of Burrillville becoming home to a new Invenergy power plant has been very controversial.
Please acknowledge humanity, the people who live there.
We might as well give the kids going to school a package of cigarettes.
Woonsocket City Council is now getting involved. For the plant to function, they need water connected from Woonsocket. The mayor says Invenergy has made him an offer. The power plant company would build a water facility in the city, paying Woonsocket $200,000 a year for 20 years instead of taxes on the property, and then pay $500,000 a year with a 3% increase every year to go to the general fund. And finally, a total of $1 million over 5 years that would go to a scholarship fund or help to repair athletic fields. Woonsocket City Council President talked to us last week as the negotiations were happening.
It is not a cooling situation, it's a different process, and they've been asking us for the provision of water.
Burrillville's town council has long been against the power plant, and in response to the water offer, the president said, "We are hopeful that Woonsocket, as it considers a proposal to provide water for the facility, will also closely examine the information from our experts regarding the potential damage this polluting monster will do."
What's really interesting about this now is that Woonsocket has been baited into this conversation with a really, really big financial incentive. This water thing is only coming up because their first water proposal didn't fly. There's concerns about contamination and all that kind of stuff. So now they're going to go next door to Woonsocket. We've got to get these folks back in here, and we shall, toot sweet, by next week, to have a revisit as to what's happening with that power plant. But when one town next door is being incentivized with millions of dollars, and by the way, they're flat broke, it's going to be an interesting juxtaposition between Woonsocket and Burrillville as to whether the concerns of the folks in Burrillville will supersede the financial interests of the folks in their own hometown. I think you could probably project where that's going to go, right? Alrighty, let's take a look at a headline here on the General Assembly. They first got into business for day one, and fissures on the floor was the headline in the Providence Journal, which I think, Ted, is kind of interesting. Welcome. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
There are fissures in state government right now, are there not?
Absolutely. I think you see, I think it'll take a little time to figure out how significant, sometimes there's a little tit for tat, but in the end it's a lot of noise, but nothing big comes out of it. But clearly right now there is some chilliness between particularly Speaker Mattiello and Governor Raimondo. I think there's a couple things at play. I think the Speaker's frustrated. He had such a close re-election fight that was so hard fought. I think he thinks that some of the missteps of the Raimondo administration left him and other lawmakers at the doorsteps, having to defend whether it's the UHIP issues or something like that. And then also, you have other lawmakers. Don't forget Cale Keeble, his close ally. There was a lot of money that went after him, and I think the Mattiello forces wonder if Governor Raimondo sort of, or if she could have done more to stop that, because some of the folks involved are people who are allied with her. Meanwhile, on the governor's side of things, they think, they've been doing a good job. They think they've partnered well, and they don't really see why there should be this kind of negativity between them. So these personality conflicts matter a lot up there in terms of what gets done, how meetings goes, all that.
Well, yesterday, just to create, if only the symbolism, the governor went to the Senate, praised them with, love working with you. She wasn't even mentioned in the House.
She was very briefly mentioned. Just thanks for being here from the speaker. But yes, no, she sat in the front along with the media and some other folks and the mayors and
I mean,
such.
hello, I guess, is a mention. My bad. But she was persona non grata.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I did hear a counter to that, which is that if you look back, she did speak to the House in 2015, but she was a new governor then. It was, you know, new leadership all around, and they don't necessarily in the past have the governor every year give a speech each side. But as you say, the quotes in the paper about, you know, I was glad to be there, and the House spokesman saying, well, she didn't tell us she was coming, so we did, you know, so if they wanted her to speak, she would have, you know, but they'll hear from her soon
Her
with the State of the
office
State.
desk is 77 feet from the podium. I don't know that she has to announce that she's going to be there.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's a rub there. Do you think that will have an actual practical impact on progress in 2017?
I think that remains to be seen. I mean, it's, for one thing, you know, they are all going to hang together. They're Democrats in the end, and they're all going to be on the ballot together in 2018. Gina Raimondo, Speaker Mattiello, his allies, both the Senate as well. So it's not actually in their interest, in anyone's political interest, to have a lot of unpleasant gridlock or things that maybe are popular not getting done because of tiffs and everything else. And frankly, I think
Isn't that more worrisome in a real two-party system? I mean, we don't really have one.
No, we don't. I mean, we're down. This is the third. I keep a spreadsheet of the Republican forces in the Assembly, and going back to the 1930s, this is the third fewest in modern history Republicans we've had up there on Smith Hill. There's only 16 in the two chambers. So, and that's it. You know, I sometimes say it's like covering communist China. You know, it's all one party, and so you have to kind of look for the rifts inside the one party. Not that Republicans don't matter at all, but a lot of what's really happening, the real, you know, fights are happening inside all people with D's after their name.
That'd be a good headline. Nesi says, covering General Assembly like covering communist China.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
A little more freedom.
Discharge the duties of the office of the presidency of
Teresa Paiva-Weed, once again at the helm of Rhode Island Senate.
entering into a year where the job of governing rather than campaigning is our top priority.
With just days until Donald Trump assumes the presidency, Paiva-Weed says this Democratic state shouldn't be concerned with his Republican administration. She tells Eyewitness News her goals for Rhode Island aren't defined by party lines.
Investments in education, job training, workforce development, moving the economy forward. These are issues on which we can all agree on the local level.
House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello, back to business. The Democrat returns with a focus on controlled spending, a continued commitment to eliminating the car tax, and the hope to increase education.
Our workforce in the future is going to find that it has to redefine itself many times over the course of a lifetime. We're going to have to address that, and we're going to have to better educate all of our children.
Mattiello also spoke about educating the public. He says new rules for the House include more transparency and less late nights.
We're not going to have a late session, I can assure you of that. The public doesn't like it. I don't like it. It's a difficult environment to work in, and we're going to make sure that we adjourn at a reasonable time.
I mean, I'm all for that as a reporter, but
what's a reasonable time?
You know, I think he doesn't want to go into the middle of the night. I think 11, midnight. You know, and not
midnight end.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's me saying that, just sort of spitballing
middle of
on
the
what he
night
means.
or early in the morning. It depends on your.
I mean, last year they
sleeping
finished
habits.
at I think 6:15 a.m.
Right.
Last year's session
That's not
ended.
going to happen.
Especially, I mean, last year particularly. It's one thing if you were having a titanic battle over some massive policy, but in the end, it was, you know, bills with advocates certainly have importance, but that weren't. Not something they necessarily felt, at least on his side, that they should be staying around until 6 a.m. battling over with the Senate.
Well, it's gonna require a little bit of time management, no doubt. The Senate President looks buoyant. The House Speaker looks a little agitated. Governor Raimondo's, you know, playing it somewhere in the middle. What do you think has got him a little on edge right now? Is it just the fact that he squeaked by? At some point, he's got to let that go, and he's got to lead. Is it the car tax promise that he doesn't have any answers for, where he might have been 11 feet out on a 10-foot board?
You know, I'm not
Is there a
sure
forecast
yet.
that Governor Raimondo is not going to participate with him on this car tax thing, which is his big promise?
You know, I expect her to put something in the budget related to the car tax, some sort of down payment on it or procedure for how to go about reducing its impact. It seems, why would she want to give all the credit to him in the legislatures if she was opposed to lowering her car tax, but, you know, and let Mattiello take, she should try to get some ownership of that politically. Also, you know, she cares about the policy that, since he is making absolutely clear it's going to happen in his view, for her to try to put her stamp to some extent on how you go about it. So I'd expect something there. But I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the speaker yet, and I think we need a little more time to watch how this year rolls out. If he's still frustrated about, you know, having a very difficult, close-fought campaign.
He's going to have some interesting input. I can't wait to have him on here to talk about this, and some of the mayors who, and town administrators who thrive on this car tax money. I mean, you got to remember something, folks. When you get your car tax, that money stays in the community. And if the threshold or the exemption goes higher, meaning there's less car tax revenue, and finally a washout where we were going up until about 4 or 5 years ago, it means more reliance on the state to supply that dough in. There's also the balance of property taxes, and all of these rates and inequities from one community to the next, compounded by the different rates and inequities in the car tax itself, don't make it a very simple thing to do.
It's not simple, you know, it seems simple, you know, just take, it's like we collect $215 million a year in car taxes, have the state write a $215 million check, send it to everybody, and then the car tax is gone and everything. But first of all, is that, there's clearly going to be a policy debate over whether you actually want to say everyone now gets state money instead of local money based on their, because that's actually going to reward those who have had high car taxes, right?
Correct.
Providence, which has jacked it up, Cranston.
It's going to create tremendous local aid inequities,
Yes.
way past the normal urban pressures.
And I actually think that's part of why Teresa Paiva-Weed is a skeptic on it. Newport, where she represents, Newport is not a high car tax community.
Well, let's remember, Massachusetts, and I've been arguing about the car tax being stupid here for a long time. I haven't screamed for an elimination necessarily, although that would be great if you could work it out. But a simplification of the process like they did in Mass, where there's no vehicle value commission, it's sticker price, and then 90, 60, 40, 20, 10% on the sticker price, $25 per thousand rate, very easy to calculate, same thing from town to town. But that wasn't done in a vacuum either. That was done amidst Proposition 2.5's total property tax reform. So Nick Mattiello made a very interesting play during a campaign, but I'm not so sure
Well, it's a big
well-thought-out
promise.
strategy.
It's actually it's one of those promises we like as reporters because it's easy to track. 5 years, phase it out. So if in 5 years it's not gone, it didn't happen.
Easy to track, not easy to do.
That's what I mean, though. But that's actually why I think the pressure's all the more. It's not one of those amorphous. You know, when you say I'm going to support jobs in the economy, well, that's in the eye of the beholder. Did you do that? How are your policies? Car tax is either going away or not. You know, the relief is either going to be seen by people or it's not. On the other hand, I will say, you know, I don't think, and I don't think you would disagree with this either, that Mattiello is nuts to think this really is something that drives a lot of people crazy in the communities where the car tax is high. I've seen it, you know, when we'll hire a reporter from a different state at Channel 12, they'll come in, you know, get their feet wet, figure out where they live and everything, and they'll come to me or someone they know has lived here for a while, especially because they know I cover politics, say, I got this pretty big bill for my old car.
Realtors never talk to people coming into town about the car tax.
Yeah.
They don't.
And it's sort of an unpleasant welcome when someone moves to Rhode Island and gets a surprise bill on a car that's often not that great.
Especially if you come from a state that doesn't have it. If you come from Mass, at least you know what the concept is.
Even there, though, I have friends who hop the border and they can't believe what the difference between an Attleboro car tax
There are people
and
who move from Cumberland to the east side and just pay, that's the problem in the state, is that you pay 3 times the amount depending on where you move to. When we come back, I think Ted's been kind of bullish on the governor lately in some of her deals. I want to ask him about that. Stay with us. So you've been, I think, bullish on Governor Raimondo. Your last couple of reviews, you think that she's fill in the blank.
I think the governor's whole theory of the case was give her some time, and she's going to be able to start to woo and win over some out-of-state big-name companies like General Electric, Johnson & Johnson, people like that. You are starting to see her be able to get those people who have no reason they need to be in Rhode Island to start not only putting some jobs here, but they're putting GE. Those jobs are the future of GE. That's all Jeff Immelt, the CEO, talks about, the Internet of Things. And that's the kind of jobs they said they'd put in Providence. I do think that's no small thing. You know, you need big companies. Think about how many jobs CVS has up in Woonsocket, and like the number just year to year goes up, that they go up and down, is so large. So getting some more big corporate presences, which Rhode Island lost in a lot of ways as the banks left and stuff, seems like it has real potential. So I think, you know, I think there are some signs that maybe she can start to make good on some of this. Now, we're spending a lot on the tax incentives to get them here. We have a lot of blue-collar folks who, she does say some of these job deals have more, you know, for people who maybe don't have a college degree, but it doesn't always look like that from the outside. So I wouldn't want to say, like, oh, she's closed the deal, she's set, you know, it's all going to be great. But I do think there's, you know, some signs she might be able to do some what she promised.
Well, here, you know, to her credit, she is working on the plan that she said she would.
Mm-hmm.
I said at the beginning the plan stinks. Because incentivizing people for specific categories of business and trying to create from a government perspective the kind of business that grows is a philosophy that I happen to disagree with, but she's been married to it. The problem is you run out of the resources to keep incentivizing, and then you get into a situation where current business in the state is finally going to get to the point where they go, you know what, where's mine?
I think that's a big
and
risk.
Business retention is a big downside of incentivizing some of these deals, and there's not that many.
Well, you need to, I mean, you know, you're right, we shouldn't overstate, you know, 100 GE jobs right now, 75 J&J jobs right now, Virgin Pulse staying in the state, bringing a bunch more jobs there. You need it to start to, you need to be able to build on it organically, you know, because of whether it's, you know, startups
That's new
flow
tax
out.
policy. It's tax policy. It's always tax policy, right?
I don't necessarily think it's
dereg, but it's a lot of it's all tax policy.
See, but if it's all tax policy, it's surprising that Silicon Valley, a place, you know, look at the taxes in California right now. Even Massachusetts is not exactly, you know, a southern state in terms of taxation. I actually think a lot of it's about your innovation. And not necessarily the forced innovation that kind of the governor's seeding it with tax money, but just like what is coming out of your universities? Is there a culture of people starting new enterprises and are they able to thrive?
When you cite for me, and this is a good friendly debate, when you cite for me when someone comes in purely on an innovation environment and doesn't ask for a break, then I'll tell you that we've got that going on. Until such time, it seems to me that it's just more money out of the till to try to create a bigger till. I don't think it's the right philosophy, but you got to give her credit. This is what she said she wanted to do.
Yep, and that's and you know
she's doing it.
And getting
we'll see how it comes out.
Getting
in
those
a couple
companies
years.
to look at the state, I think, is an achievement in itself. You know, not necessarily one. I don't know that she's secured re-election on it by any means, but I just think, you know, it's also, I admit that, like, it's nice once in a while to see something that looks like a hopeful sign. We've had a lot of tough years in Rhode Island.
I think that is subjectively objective. You know, no, it is. I mean, because every once in a while, writing some good news is a fun thing to do. Thanks, buddy. Good to see you. Happy
I used
New Year. Final word when we come back. Stay with us. Tomorrow we'll talk about your wellness. Everybody's in the gym. Everyone's got resolutions, and by the time the month is over, everybody's the gyms are empty, and you're back to doing the same old stuff. We'll try to get you on the right track to do it the right way. All right, we'll see you on the radio at 3 o'clock as well on WPRO. Thanks for watching and listening. Good night.